In this video, you're going to see a cool experiment of testing old line versus new line. So this line has been in my tackle bag for the last like 2 years, and it's been getting hot, cold. And by the way, this is actually pretty handy. Tony did a tip on using a koozie to keep the line under control, and it's actually really effective. But anyhow, I wanted to see if the line being in the tackle bag got worse over time or not. And so what I did, this is old, and this is brand new from the tackle shop. Obviously, they're the exact same lines. And so what I did, I ran a series of tests. This is the knot breaker. It's motorized, so it's very controlled, and we have a very sensitive tester right here to know the exact breaking point. So how I did the test, I did the old line, then the new line, and I just kept going back and forth. You can see I did it a ton of times. And while I was doing this test, I did one round with saliva, where I used saliva to cinch down the knot, which is what most people think is the right way to do it. And then I did another one without saliva, and the results of this experiment were shocking. So what is your guess? Does the old line get worse over time, or does it hold true to the new line? And then secondly, does saliva help or hurt the knots? So now that you have your assumptions, let's go through the details. I think you're going to be surprised. So here are the results from the first half of the study. We're looking at the old line versus the new line, and I used 2 different knots just in case there was an anomaly with one type of knot versus the other. This one relies on a bunch of coils. This is more condensed. And these numbers represent the pound breaking point of every test. So the green is the highest. So for this uni knot, the new line, the highest breaking point was 22.09 pounds. Compared to the old line, the best performance was 20.02 pounds. And so in general, the uni knot was actually pretty close. The old line was just 1% worse than the new line. On the orifice knot, it was more extreme, but not nearly as extreme as the saliva study that I'll show next. So for the orifice knot, in total, it was 5% worse with the old line versus the new lines. So in general, even though this is a pretty small sample set, I believe there's enough data to say that yes, the old line does get worse over time if it's out in the elements getting hot and having temperature changes, humidity changes. So make sure to keep your gear indoors whenever possible. So now let's get to the more surprising one. And this is looking at the saliva cinch versus the dry cinch. A lot of people, I bet if you ask 10 different fishermen if you need to put saliva or to wet your knot before you cinch it down, if you need to do it, most people would say yes. And this is another study that proves that to be false. So the saliva for the uni knot, the saliva line is right here. So the best we got with the saliva was 18.68 pounds. Compared to the best I got with dry was 22.09 pounds. Huge difference. And this was, on average, it was 12% worse, the breaking point, when I used saliva to cinch the knot down versus when I cinched it down dry. That is shocking. That is a huge difference. So you're better off using old line and just not using saliva when you cinch down the knot than using brand new line and actually putting saliva on it. So make sure, if you are using saliva, make sure to stop doing so for both mono and fluoro. On the orifice knot, there's less movement, so the difference wasn't quite as drastic, but it still was worse with saliva versus just doing it totally dry. It was a 5% worse performance using the saliva. So I'm curious on how your prediction was. Were you right? Were you wrong? If you were wrong, what part was off, and what was your biggest surprise? You leave that in the comment section down below. We've done a lot of testing on both lines as well as knots. And if you want to see the best of the best by skill level, we have a new fishing school. And that school goes through the best knots and the best lines to use based on skill level. Obviously, beginners just keep it super simple. And once we get more advanced, we go through the more advanced knots that have the ultimate breaking strength and having the smallest diameter to make sure that you maximize your performance. Here's a quick look at the fishing school. You can see it's broken out by skill level. And once you get in, you'll be able to see the different topics. So for every skill level, we have the lines and the knots that have outperformed everything else, again, based on complexity. But more importantly, we always start with finding the fish, then positioning, casting, all the essentials for going out and having a ton of fun out on the water and maximizing results. And as always, right down here at the bottom on every one, there's a comments feed. You can ask any questions as you're going through, just to make sure that you get the help you need to have as much fun on the water as possible. Thank you so much for watching this video. Any questions at all, comment down below. I love to hear how you did and your hypothesis of that test. And if you have any other ideas for contests we can do with this knot test machine, please leave that in the comment section below as well. Thanks again. Hope to see you again soon.